over the course of 30 minutes, I felt my health decline. Just watching a program series on Netflix that we normally watch, within 30 minutes, I went from feeling okay to my head was throbbing. I could feel my temperature had risen. And I knew that the infection was starting to occur. I went and took the test, and of course, the next day I found out I was positive. Around the same time, we started to see lethargy and lack of eating in our pet. We have a cat, and the cat started to exhibit behavior of sleeping a lot and never leaving our sides. And he's a pretty independent cat, but he would, the moment we sat down, he was laying with us. He would sleep with me, stopped eating. You could feel the coughing and the breathing seem heavy in him. For the course of the illness, both my spouse and I had different symptoms. His symptoms were related to fevers, night sweats, body aches, and cough. My symptoms, I had no night sweats. I had low-grade fevers, 100, 101. Mine was body aches and fatigue. I would literally fall asleep in the middle of the day. I also had shortness of breath. It was hard to speak a sentence at a time. There's no way I could have conducted even this much of this interview without having to pause and focus on breathing deep breaths before I would come back to speak. That's a very, it's a very interesting question, and it takes me back. My spouse is HIV negative, and when he was confirmed with having COVID before I got sick, I had phoned some family members, and it was a hard time. It's hard for me now to recall this. I was worried for him because we didn't know how bad it could be. I was scared to death. I didn't know anybody else who was positive. It was early on in the pandemic. And I started to have the same fears I had some 30 years ago when I discovered I was HIV positive, and there was no treatment in those days. I do because in my case, and I think what's considered a long-term survivor, I was living in San Francisco. I was in the heat of it. The community was decimating in those days in 1989, 1990. When I had my test results come back, there was nothing. I mean, AZT was just coming on the market. The death sentence was literally your prognosis 6 to 8 months. And that's what we heard. I was 26 years old. And having COVID on April 28th come back this year, it was it all over again. Nobody knew anything. I'm actually not certain, what is a lingering effect from having COVID, and what is the circumstances of an alternative social life. Working from home now, having this, lack of ability to have full socialization like we used to with gatherings and stuff. Is my sense of fatigue because winter is coming on, and is this pandemic fatigue, or is it residual COVID fatigue? I don't know, but there is a sense of lethargy. I can't be certain. I was fortunate to have a comparator of a negative person in my life, going through the same channels I went through, right? We went through the disease literally 5 days apart. Our recovery time was timely. He recovered a week before me, basically. We watched our last symptom to resolve was taste and smell. And while we started to feel better within 3 weeks, taste and smell didn't come back for 8 to 9 weeks. We were at a point wondering whether or not it would come back. I had my spouse's experience ahead of me to sort of align with where I would go. In other words, when he started to feel better, well, okay, I should expect to feel better in a week, but will my HIV make me not feel better? Will it linger beyond? And I work in medical research, so I have that kind of mindset of how to gauge symptoms. And when I felt myself getting better about a week later, I thought, okay, I'm not going to take a different path. There's a lot of discussion about people who catch COVID who may have other comorbidities, but you hear about people with diabetes or you hear about people with heart disease. You don't hear anybody with other diseases and how COVID affects them. We know a little bit more. It would be great to hear something like, what can people with HIV expect? Is there any bearing? Or even just to mention that, HIV bears no comorbidity impact on the virus. Are we studying that? Are we looking at what kind of T cell factors, antigen factors that are going on in the chemistry of the body for HIV people that's different? We're on antivirals. So what impact do the antivirals we're taking have upon a virus like COVID? I think this is going to be very helpful for people to hear in our community what this is like, and perhaps to allay some of those hidden fears.